I'm Erin Rose Widener, and welcome to Hollywood Defined. We know of famous producers like Jerry Bruckheimer, Harvey Weinstein, and Joss Whedon. But do we really know what producers do? This week, we'll look at the role of the producer here in Hollywood. Let's go to Moviola's exclusive visual glossary of terms to get a definition for this seemingly ambiguous role.
A producer oversees all aspects of a film or television production, from the acquisition of film rights and funding, all the way to post-production and distribution. On smaller independent features, a single person may fulfill all producer functions, while on larger features, several specialist producers work together to see a movie through production. These specialized production roles include executive producer, line producer, post-producer, and visual effects producer.
There are actually many kinds of producers, and their list of duties differ. To shed more light on this role, we talked to Joel Soisson, a producer that's been in the industry for 30 years. Here he is with Mike Leahy.
I think there's no other category in film by far that's as misunderstood as producing, because a producer can be a person who is absolutely in all ways responsible for the quality, the look, the narrative of film, everything about it, who's in it. And then there are many producers who basically had nothing to do with the film except owned the project. We did a film called Feast, which had 23 producers on it, 22 of whom I don't think I ever met in my life. Producers who produce are really come into two categories. They're what we call the creative producer and what we call the line producer, which is not used as much today as a term. They often get credit as a production manager or executive producer. They're responsible for the physical production of the film. So if you really wanted to understand the difference between a producer and a line producer, you could kind of look at it as, say you're making Godzilla. Now the producer is the guy that's got to find the new script for Godzilla. He's got to get the rights to the old Godzilla. He's got to do all that legal stuff. He's got to sit down over way too many lattes with the director that he chooses and come up with a cast. I say he, often it's a she. Then there's the line producer, who's responsible for all of the physical aspects of making that film. If it's Godzilla, he's the guy that has to figure out what happens when Godzilla's foot lands on Tokyo. Tremendous financial boundaries that restrict everything he does, and what he needs to know is what every crew person does, how they do it. He's a foreman. And on many of these highly complex films, that is the real field marshal that makes a movie.
The buck stops with producers. They take responsibility of anything and everything that happens, whether good or bad. So here's a piece of trivia. The Producers Guild of America has a code of credits for who gets the title of producer on a motion picture. The code attaches specific weight to producer functions and requires a producer to have had substantial involvement in a majority of those functions to qualify. We sat down with Joe Lazarov, who has worked on shows like Northern Exposure and Gossip Girl. He filled us in on his role as a creative producer.
A show called Touching Evil, and it was up in Vancouver. It was with Jeffrey Donovan and Vera Farmiga, and Bradley Cooper was a guest star in that. We killed him. It was a great experience for me because they still needed someone to do post, but they also needed someone who could handle everything that happens, not on the financial side, but just more on the creative side of things, because everybody was in LA. The showrunners, the network, and the studio were all in LA, and they needed someone to sort of guide the ship. And so I came in and did that. What was nice was the fact that since I was in charge of post as well, I knew what we needed, being in contact with the networks and the studio, and we realized what the tone of the show was. I was able to deal with the actors. The learning curve was, what's the prop guy do, and what does the set decorator do, and what's the on-set decorator, and those things. That was a learning curve for me because I had been on set a lot, but not in the position of talking to these people and being, quote unquote, their supervisor or their boss. So that was new for me.
Joe started directing while he was a producer on Gossip Girl, and now he's a director for ABC Family TV shows. Well, it's about time to wrap up this week's episode. For more of the interview with Joel and Joe, more visual glossary of terms, and a host of other learning tools, visit moviola.com. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next week when we define another Hollywood role.